Okay, I am going to talk about an addition that I did to the Create with Code Challenge 4. Um, so I wanted to create a new enemy rather than having the ball be the enemy. This enemy acts as an AI to go and score the ball. So you can click play here. See real quickly what it does. You can see the black ball is moving towards the center here. He goes and he hits the ball in the direction of the goal. You can see I added this friendly that spawns in the second wave, along with the second enemy that spawns in the second wave. Only add the one friendly and have a maximum of the two enemies. I just felt that worked the best for what I had made here and made the most sense. So if we wait a second here and wait for someone to try and score this, we'll let that go down there. And you can see that we now have 3 balls spawned. So one of the things that I have the enemies and also the friendly do is to find the ball, the soccer ball that is closest to them when they first get going, and that's the ball that they work on scoring into their respective goals. I think I came that way, wrong direction for him there. So I'm stuck in the corner. I added a empty object in the middle of the field, so hopefully it wouldn't get stuck in the corner, but it seems like it's managed to anyways. You can see if we can break that free out of here. And I'll help this guy out so we can go ahead and move on to the next wave here. But if I do this, let me get it out of there. So that's what I challenged myself to do. Took some work, but I got through it and figured out how to do that. Let me pause the game here and come into some of the code. Player controller really didn't change much from the end of the challenge to now because all the changes were done with the enemy and then adding the friendly. I did add this else if and where you tell assign the force that's applied to the ball when you hit it, just so when I hit G it goes towards the goal. Just make it a little bit easier to score for debugging stuff. Thought that was helpful. Coming to the spawn manager here, there were a few changes in here having to do with spawning the enemy to start off with, and then spawning the new enemy and spawning the friendly in the second wave. That's all done in the same function here as spawning the power-ups and the balls as in the original, and it's done in a similar way. I call that up here in my update when there are 0 enemies, and then it instantiates the balls with the number of waves like we had in the past, and then if the wave counts greater than 1 and less than 3, so second wave, it spawns a new enemy and a friendly, and then set the enemy speed, and spawning the new enemy and spawning the friendly, just instantiating those to separate those into their own functions, just because I thought that would be a little bit nicer. Reset player position. This resets all the positions on a random X range. And then this is just the vector 3 for where this spawns in, the new enemy and friendly. We'll look at the enemy code here first. The friendly is very similar. I copy and pasted it and just changed a few of the variables so that it would go towards the enemy goal rather than the player goal. I'll show you that in a minute. But the enemy code really changed. That's where most of the addition was within this class here. Same sort of speed, still finding the rigid body, finding the player goal, that's the same as it was before with the old enemy. And then I used a delegate here, which is something that Create with Code has not spoken about. There are some good other videos on YouTube explaining how delegates work. I'll not explain that right now because they're complicated and that I would start confusing you more than helping you. And then I have, this is along with the delegate, this public new balls, that's all part of the delegate there. And then I have a game object that is the ball choice, so the ball that's closest, and an array of the balls. The variables just right here using the ball x class, an array of balls. That's the variable name for that. You see that variable a lot in this. Off the start, assign the rigid body, assign the player goal, and then this is where I call the delegate to do this check for new balls, or that's where I assign the delegate to a function, and then the delegate gets called here in the update with this question mark dot invoke. Again, that will be explained to you in another video about delegates. So this first thing that happens in the update is this ball check, which does check for new balls, so we can look at that. And that just it assigns the ball array to find objects of type, which is the class ball x. So it just creates that array. And then if the enemy does not have a ball choice currently, so if ball choice is null, then you call get closest ball, which is this function here. This was probably the most difficult piece of this. Need quite a lot of help with this from the internet and from a teacher. So this logic here is assigning the closest ball to the enemy that hasn't already been assigned to another enemy. So this first part here is just assigning, as here, you want to create this minimum distance, and this is just a local variable here because you don't need it in any of your other functions throughout the class. And you would think that this minimum distance you want to be small, but you want to start off with a very large number, so you use this mathf.infinity. And then a for loop here that uses the array of balls. And then if your balls and you assign with I, that I is this variable up here, and that number is the number that is in your array, so you have your first you have item 0 in your array, so it goes through and checks to see if ball 0 is targeted equals false. So if it hasn't been targeted by one of the other enemies, then it runs this code here, which says another local variable here of dis for distance is balls. We're going to continue to just substitute 0 for this I here because it's the first thing that it goes through. If the ball 0 in the array finds transformed position of that minus the transformed position of the enemy, and then square magnitude. So this does Pythagorean theorem essentially without doing the square root. So it's a larger number. You don't want to do the square root because that uses up quite a lot of processing power from the computer and slows everything down. So that's your distance here. So you're finding how far on a triangle you are from the ball 0 in this case, which is what we're explaining. And then if that distance is less than the minimum distance, so if it's less than infinity for the first time that runs through this, then you assign that minimum distance to this distance, and ball choice then equals ball 0 dot game object, and then it goes through if your array has more than one ball, so then it'll go and do that for ball number 1 in the array. And again, if it's not targeted, then it'll run through this. It finds the distance to ball 1. And then if that distance is less than the minimum distance, which remember was assigned here from ball 0, then it determines that ball 1 is then a shorter ways away than ball 0. So then it goes through this again and reassigns the minimum distance and sets that as the ball choice. So it does that until it goes all the way through the array, and that figures out what the closest ball is. And if this is the last thing here, just to prevent errors, if the ball choice here is not equal to true, then the component of the class ball x is targeted equals true, so it just says that that one has been targeted so that another one doesn't come through, and you prevent both enemies from going after the same ball with that this check right here. So that was how you get the closest ball, and then if it already has been assigned to a ball, then it finds the direction to the ball, which then is the movement direction. That's sort of redundant there because I was messing around with how to best do this movement direction. It ended up being just going directly towards the ball, and then you add force to the enemy rigid body in the vector of the movement direction. And let's see here, what else do I have in here? And then when the enemy collides with the ball, that's just done with the compare tag here. It could also be done with find objects of type and then the class ball x. Is your rigid body, get the rigid body of the enemy, and then I found the vector 3 away from the player. It could be away from the enemy as well in this case because that's the direction it is. You find away from the player, so that's how it's done in the player controller as well. And then I found the vector towards the goal. So it finds both the direction directly away from the player when it hits the ball and the vector towards the goal. So if the goal is like over here and it's coming at the ball this way, then I'll find this vector and this vector, and the score direction I set to be the addition of those two. So it would go in between those two vectors, because that looked more natural than it going directly away from the, or directly towards the goal, so it doesn't like try to roll over it and go backwards of the way that it hits. But it also tries to get it in the direction of the goal rather than just hitting away from the player the whole time. And then just adding the force to the rigid body of the ball. And then if we come here, we can look at the friendly code. Very similar. The biggest change is just changing the goal to be assigned to the enemy goal rather than the player goal, so that it goes in the correct direction. And other than that, it's pretty much exactly the same code, because they're essentially doing the same thing, just in opposite directions. And then I did have some code for the soccer ball in the middle. One of those things was going to the center of the field. So I just assigned that empty game object to center field, and get the rigid body of the ball. I also check for out of bounds, because occasionally the ball will ping through the wall if you hit it too hard with the turbo and the power up, and then it confuses the AIs because it doesn't know where the ball is, and it also confuses the wave count because you never get to a situation where enemy count equals 0, even though there are no balls left in the field. So that just destroys it if it goes outside of the walls for whatever reason. Other than that, and the same thing of just destroying it when it goes through the goals. But that's pretty much exactly the same. And then the rotate hammer stayed the same from the original challenge as well. I'll show the center field here. Just created a empty game object and placed it in the middle of the field here. That's how I set that. And I believe that's everything that I added to Challenge 4 and how I did the code for those. Thank you.